Today on Backstage Agents, we're talking to John Lorenz from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, our first out-of-state guest. Super excited to have him. He's been a very successful real estate agent in the Milwaukee area. He came from a background in high school counseling and is now into songwriting down in Nashville. And it was fun talking to somebody who's newer to town in Nashville and figuring out how to navigate those waters. So there's tons of good stuff on this one. Look forward to everybody hearing this. John, welcome to Backstage Agents. You're the first out-of-state guest that we've had, and we're super stoked that you came all the way down to Nashville from Wisconsin to visit us. So, first and foremost, let's get your cigar lit here.
All right, sounds good.
Get this lit for you.
Thank you.
John's new to cigars.
A little bit of a novice.
Well, not new, but not a regular smoker.
Correct. So if I wind up choking and passing out,
We got CPR on the
right, somewhere.
That's a good Nashville cigar is the place to come.
Right. All right, just give me
awesome.
a few puffs on that, and I'll make sure you're good. There you go.
The service they have here is crazy. They'll light your cigars. And
Yeah.
That's great.
All right, John, now that you're all lit up, just kind of describe how you and I got connected in the first place.
All right. Ironically, we're from the same hometown. Going back years, I started a golf outing. This will bring us back to where we met.
Yeah.
But for some good friends of mine whose fathers passed away, I had 4 of them through high school and college, passed away from cancer, various types of cancer, and kind of wanted to do something about that. There was already an honorary golf outing for one of the fathers. Eventually that ended. We might have been in college and we might have taken the course over a little bit too much and maybe not invited back. So we decided to run a wiffle ball tournament out of my parents' backyard for a while in Menominee Falls, your hometown.
Yeah.
And we ran that for 9 years and raised money for the Cancer Care Center at Community Memorial Hospital, where you might have been born. I think you may have been. I don't know.
Yeah.
And so we did that for 9 years, and it got to be a lot once I had 2 kids and 2 jobs. And then I started the golf outing on top of that and overlapped it. So it started to wear a little bit. And so then I decided to take it just all to the golf outing. So did this golf outing called Protect the Package. I was raising money for these men and their cause. And my wife came home one day with a shirt that said Save the Tatas for a breast cancer walk that she had just done for her in honor of her grandma. And I'm like, whoa, that's clever. You're taking someone's humor and you're making something good out of it and you're giving it back to the cause. So I'm like, that night we went out to dinner and I'm like, Save the Tatas, cool. All right, men can get breast cancer, small percentage, but we got a lot of these man cancers. What should we do here? So I'm like, Protect the Package. She's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, that's what we're going to call it. She's like, call what? I said, that's what we're going to call the company I'm going to start to raise money for man cancer. We're going to be the Susan Coleman of man cancers. And so started that, got the website that night, got a law firm in Milwaukee to do my trademarking pro bono, and just started running with that. And started this outing, and it quickly became sold out pretty regularly. I took the creativity I had at this wiffle ball tournament, which is wound up getting national touring teams asking me to come and play in my parents' backyard and the surrounding neighbors. And I'm like, well, 1, there's wiffle ball tournament teams. How do I join? And 2, no, I don't want you guys coming into this charity event. I don't know you, but I appreciate the call. So we did that for a while, and with the Protect the Package outing, it just kind of, all the creativity, like I said, from that wiffle ball tournament got plugged into it because everybody can do a golf outing. Hardly anybody does a wiffle ball tournament, so that was a pretty easy sell. So we started doing some things with the outing that set it aside. Live music beforehand, massage therapy beforehand, breweries that came out and did samplings on the course. The game still mattered, so you weren't doing these funky little gadget things at an outing just to raise more money. We still raised a lot of money, but we wanted the game to still matter, no matter what level you were at. So anyway, did that for 11 outings. So combined between the 9 wiffle ball tournaments and the 11 outings, there's 20 events. And we raised over $100,000 over those years, and I never went into it with a goal. And I'm like, all right, well, this seems like pretty good round numbers. Let's maybe just put it to a rest. So I kind of billed my 11th outing as my last one. That winter, I was invited to a gala down at the Pfister, a really nice hotel in downtown Milwaukee, with a foundation called This Time Tomorrow. A lender friend of mine named Mike Drews invited me to that event as a guest at his table. And so I'm sitting at this gala with this foundation called This Time Tomorrow. And what they do is they take music and the arts and celebrate that night and raise money for those fighting cancer, and having some kind of financial need. So they do what's called random acts of kindness. So they have people nominate, like anybody here, anybody in Nashville, anybody around here that kind of is connected to somebody at the foundation can nominate a person that's battling any kind of cancer. And as long as they qualify and have financial need, we'll vet through the applications and we'll get some great nominees. So I'll get back to that in a second. So I wind up at this gala, and watching this foundation put on this event was incredible. Corey Zimmerman and Tony Goff, the founders, just have this down, and they have so much energy for it. So they put this on, go home, and I'm just like, wow, that was amazing. So that winter, thought about it some more, prayed about it some more, about my outing and what I should do. I'm like, you know what? It's not that I'm wanting to stop it. When I get comfortable, I get bored. And I've been running this thing for 11 years. I loved the day of. The day of was amazing. The prep work, I didn't mind doing, but it became routine because I kind of had my go-tos and I had a lot of other stuff going, so I wasn't able to truly connect or keep pushing more to it. But I'm like, you know what? It's not that, again, I'm wanting to stop, but I think I'm just too comfortable. I need to make this bigger. And so why try to keep reinventing the wheel when I've got this incredible foundation that I just met, or these people that I just saw? So I randomly reached out to Tony Goff through Facebook, messaged him saying, hey, Tony, I met you that night, but you were running around like crazy. Would love to meet you. I don't know exactly why, but I want to talk to you more about this foundation. So we get together, again, not knowing what the meeting was going to be about, but halfway through, I'm just like, this is it. I want to give them my money. I was giving it to, at that point, the Medical College of Wisconsin. They were great. They treated me like I was giving them millions, and they kept me very involved, which was awesome. But I was looking now to an organization, a foundation that would be giving out these random acts of kindness, and you can see the immediate emotion. I'm a high school counselor by trade, so I don't mind the emotional garbage that life brings on. I kind of would run to it as a counselor. And so I was kind of, I was okay with that. And so I was just like, yeah, let's give you the money. I would like to make this happen. And they're like, yeah, we'll take the money. And I said, I really don't want you to do a whole lot. I want you to come and enjoy the outing. And I knew that they were well connected with social media and just the people they knew around the state of Wisconsin. And that could then lead to maybe some more people being involved in the outing. So decided to move it to a bigger course. So in the process of doing that, I was asked to be on the executive board. And now I'm seeing these nominations come in. The RAC committee would go through them, and at our meetings we would talk about where we have racks to deliver. And just so happened at this one meeting, totally long story to get to your question, I get there's a nomination for a woman that lives in Menominee Falls. I'm like, well, I could take that. I live 15 minutes north, and that's my hometown. And so I grabbed that nomination, and I grabbed the bundle of stuff we give and talked to the nominator and got that all set up to just surprise your mom.
Yeah.
And go walking into her backyard, and it was your mom and dad, and they're two best friends. And we start talking about the foundation. And then eventually I hand over this random act of kindness, which includes a $5,000 check to go to whatever you need. We know that anybody that's battling cancer, $5,000 medically is like a drop in the ocean, but there's bills to pay, there's food to buy, there's vacations to take because you've been so stressed for so long. Whatever you want to do with it, you do. And so as we're talking in your backyard, I'm talking more about This Time Tomorrow and how it all started with a song, because This Time Tomorrow is a song that the founder, Corey Zimmerman, wrote for a friend of his who was diagnosed with a supposed to be terminal cancer 20 years ago. And his friend said, I'm not going anywhere. Let's do something with this song. And so they turned it into this foundation. And so when I'm telling your parents this, they're like, oh, hey, well, we're really involved in music. Our family's pretty involved in music. And your dad was a bass player for Willie Porter and various others. And then they're like, you should meet our son, Christian. We're going to call him anyway about this whole thing. And then realized I was in real estate. And he's like, oh, well, he's in real estate. And we talked a little bit about some songs that I hoped to write and was in the process of. And I shared some of them with your parents, and they're like, yeah, you really need to talk to Christian. And so that's how the phone call eventually started.
Yep.
And then after talking to you a few times, you mentioned your buddy Dan here to reach out and talk to him, real estate agent in the area and songwriter. And then you suggested I come down here. And here I am.
You got to be here, man.
Here I am.
You got to be here.
So,
Yeah.
that was a 15-minute answer to your 2-second question.
Hey, I love that. Like I said, the more that you talk, the better. So,
All right.
But yeah, my mom has had ovarian cancer for 6 years. So that was a very generous thing that you did. I remember I called her and she told me what had happened, and it was really awesome to hear. And obviously, like you said, been incredibly helpful. And so it's really cool to hear that whole story. And then we connected on the phone. I had you connect with Dan because you've been thinking about making trips down to Nashville, have made a few trips down to Nashville because you write songs, and figured, well, why not on one of these trips have you on the podcast, because you also do real estate in Wisconsin. And it's kind of the goal of this is to get as many real estate musician people that we can out there and just telling their stories. Now, you had mentioned that you were in counseling before you got into real estate.
Correct.
Walk me through the transition and why you ended up in real estate from counseling at a high school.
Yeah. So, you put in 6 years to get a master's degree in educational psychology. And so I did that right off the bat. I was 24 when I finished my master's and just started getting into counseling right away. And it was going great. Like I said, the social emotional BS that kids go through, for some reason, that was a draw to me. Thankfully, I had a really good upbringing and didn't have a whole lot of that to go on. So I think I was just like to be put in that position to try to help others that were going through it. And so that was going great. I worked in the inner city of Milwaukee for a couple years, worked out in Beaver Dam. So you can imagine by the name of that it's out there a ways, and great community somewhere right in between Milwaukee and Madison. And then I moved out to Hartford, which is about 30 minutes north of your hometown. And Hartford High School had an opening. And so I started in real estate right before I went to Hartford. And it all happened. And when my wife hears this, she's heard the story a million times because it all started with her. Well, and she was pregnant with our second, our little daughter Harper. Well, she's 11 now, and my son is 13, Landon. But she was pregnant with Harper, and she says, "John, do you think I could stay at home and raise the kids. And at the time, she was a commercial interior designer. And so she had a salary. And I was in education. I did not get in education to make a lot of money. And I'm like, yeah, you should do that. I need to go get another job because it's not going to work with what we were paying in bills and what we would be paying again in bills with Harper being added to the family and whatnot. So I'm like, well, what could I do kind of quickly to start making some money? Maybe as a 100% commission job, it's a maybe. And so I started looking around for places that were offering the real estate classes to take the exam. Well, almost 12 years ago, the market was not good.
Yeah.
Every place I called, the tech schools, because I needed face-to-face. There was online options, but me online is a bad idea. I get stuck in a room at a computer and I am just shiny object, squirrel chaser. I will not focus on that TV. I need a person there that I feel like I need to respect and give that attention to. So I called some of the surrounding tech schools and other places, and they're like, well, we need 5 people to run the class. It would start next month. All right, cool. How many do you have? They're like, well, you're the first call we've gotten in 6 months. So the likelihood is we're not going to offer the class. I'm like, awesome. Great. So in Wisconsin, there's a real estate company that is pretty well known, and they offer real estate classes. And with the hope then that if you take the classes through that, I'm sure they hope to try to get most of those agents to sign on with them.
Right.
It's not a requirement, but that's what they hoped.
Yeah.
Well, I was, again, going to be new.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, well, I don't want to go to the machine. So in my head, they were asking me. We had great meetings, and they're asking me to join. And I'm just kind of like, nah, I didn't want to become a number. And so I worked on getting that license. And then afterwards, totally kind of sort of like how I am with music right now, just learning and trying to figure my way through. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go and try to find a smaller brokerage in Lake Country near us, near Menominee Falls, about 20 minutes away. Wasn't born on a lake, wasn't born on the country clubs that are out there. But I'm like, yeah, if I get into a brokerage out there, maybe I'll be able to get into some lake houses. Who knows? I'll work my way in. So I tried that, and the first company that I came to didn't want to hire a part-time agent because I was still going to be a counselor.
Yeah.
And I said, no, you want to hire me. I'll be a full-time agent and a full-time counselor. Just trust me on this. Well, it took 2 2-hour meetings to convince them. And then they're like, yep, we'll take you. I'm like, awesome. So we get into it. And my boss, the broker, one of the 2 brokers, great lady. And to this day, I think if I saw her, she'd agree with this, that we as boss and an employee did not mesh the best because her first thing was like, hey, we needed to work on your business plan. I'm like, my business plan's really easy. I need to sell houses before I have to sell my own. So I'm really motivated to get into this business. And okay, she's like, okay, well, here's some books about, people skills. And I'm like, okay, don't need to read that book. God gave me those. And I've been a high school counselor. I have a master's in psychology. Not saying that's the answer to everything communication-wise, but I know how to talk to people. Just teach me the damn contracts. Yeah. And so eventually decided, all right, this isn't going to work there. So I wound up going back to the big machine that I took the classes through and said, hey, I was wrong. You guys have it all set up, like good training for new incoming agents, good culture. You have a lot of good stuff going on. So can I come back? And they're like, yeah, we kind of missed you to begin with. We'd love to have you back. So did that, got into it. And again, it's all because of that one question that Becky asked is, can I stay at home and raise the kids? So once I started getting into it in a bad market, I thankfully found some pretty good business and overlapped counseling and real estate for 4 years. had the 2 kids, the 2 jobs. I remember that time of my life, but not that, detailed, because it was just go, go, go. But it was working, and I somehow handled it. Mm-hmm. And, this will be our 19th year of marriage this coming 2 weeks. So I apparently did all right with the marriage to get through that as well. Yeah. It wasn't always easy. It's a lot of time, as you know, in this industry, plus the counseling job. But then once I kind of got my legs under me in real estate, and counseling had changed quite a bit, where now my face-to-face with the students was getting pulled back because of cutbacks in the school and more work falling on the counselors that were not student-focused. Mm-hmm. So I wound up finding myself in my office behind a computer a lot. And that's never a good thing, again, with me being alone and just whatever. So I realized, all right, my skills aren't being utilized anymore. What I'm best at, I'm not able to do. So I'm gonna jump. And so I got out of counseling. This will be my 7th school year coming up that I've been out, and strictly doing real estate. And so it wasn't ever anything I intended to get into. Mm-hmm. I'm very happy that I did, but it never crossed my mind until that question was asked.
Yeah. Yeah, that's funny. I know Dan and I have similar stories of that, like moving to town and you get to a point where, something shifts and what you were doing isn't enough. And it's like, I got to make money. Like, what do I do? I know that's how Dan ended up back in real estate in Nashville, where it was like, I got to make money. Like,
Yep.
Do you, you talked about your wife, and a lot of times husband and wife teams do well, maybe do the best in real estate. Mm-hmm. How much like the support from your marriage has transferred over to your real estate career?
A lot. And the biggest thing that Becky has provided me is complete trust and support. Like, no matter what my heart would lead to, no matter what my business led to, she was always and is always very quick to just say, go, do it. It's a faith thing. Faith is big in both of our lives, but she has the ability to just jump. And I'm in awe of that, where for me, I'll like put my toe to the edge and look over, and then look over a little more, and then back up, and then go back. And then eventually I'll jump. Calculated risk taker, where she's not a risk taker, because in her mind, it's not a risk. It's give it to God, just do it. And there's been so many times in our marriage where that has been the case, where you'd think by now I'd be a little bit less hesitant. But case in point, to today's market for me has been slow. Like, I've been in this now going on 11 and a half years, and I've never experienced a stretch like this where it's slow. But this kind of gets us probably towards the next question of, but I believe that's for a reason. It's been very hard for me to understand that reason, because I'm watching the finances and I'm watching what I want to be able to provide for the family, and going, all right, there's got to be something more, because there's no reason. The people that are around me, the team that I'm on now, they're all doing really well. Agents that have been in this for a while, doing really well. The new ones that are coming in and jumped in the last few years because everything was going great, I think it's going to start to weed some of that out. But I don't believe that's part of where I'm supposed to go. I just think that this is a moment of my life where my season's supposed to slow down, so I can push forward more on the passion that got me here to Nashville today and this week, to explore something that was put on my heart a while ago, and I've been slowly and meticulously going after it. And now I think it's just time that I need to push it all in and realize, yes, this is what I'm supposed to do, or it's, no, John, just leave it up to the professionals, and you're not one of those. So,
and when you say this is what you're supposed to do, what this are you talking about?
I believe that in my heart, and what I've been blessed with is to be able to tell stories. Hence the 15-minute answers to these questions. Somewhere in there, when you edit this, might be a really good story, and you'll be able to cut off some of the extra stuff that I talk about. But there was never a time growing up that I ever thought about music besides loving to listen to it. Mm-hmm. Do you want me just to flow right into the songwriting part of it, or do you want to?
Yeah, you can talk about that. Just kind of, because you mentioned songwriting and loving music, so just elaborate on all of that for us, and how, like, what you would like to be doing, and exploring Nashville and how that's been, because Dan and I have been here a while, so you're here for a while, you end up pretty jaded, so it's always fun and refreshing to.
I still have that naive shine on me.
You're wide-eyed and bushy-tailed,
right?
As we say.
You're going to NSAI after this.
Right? I am. I'm going right to NSAI.
Can you tell the listeners what that is?
National Songwriters Association International.
It's like the board of realtors for songwriters.
There we go. Yeah. There we go. And truth be told on that, I didn't know anything about that until about a year and a half ago. Mm-hmm. And that will make me even more sense when I talk to you how long I've been thinking about this dream of songwriting. So it all goes back to, I hated English class. Mm-hmm. I hated reading poetry. I hated writing poetry. I took AP English in high school. I don't know why. Besides, once I got into the class, there was 23 girls and 3 guys. So I really liked the ratio, and I like my chances of staying focused on probably anything but English. But struggled through that class. Then went on to college and did what I had to minimalized for English, and got my degree. Well, then it was my second year in counseling when I was at Messmer High School in Milwaukee, and I met a Phi Ed teacher named Steve. Great guy. Walks in any room and just owns it without asking. Just had that positive personality, storytelling, like everything about him. You just wanted to be around him. And at the end of that school year, he was diagnosed with cancer. And he had to, and it was super aggressive. And so he had to take time away to go and fight this battle. So the next school year, he would occasionally pop in, and you could just see the change physically in him. But every time you saw him, he just had that same passion. No matter what the cards were dealt, he was still that guy. And I'm sure behind the scenes, he was, scared to death. I'm sure your mom has experiences that she'll share with you, and maybe not the world, but that's just, I would assume that's how it is. So I was at a basketball game working crowd control because of my huge stature. and Steve came walking in, and the steroids had just blown him up quite a bit, but like I said, he still had that way about him. So he walks up into the bleachers to watch the kids play the game. And right away, everybody in the bleachers just started kind of forming around him. They hadn't seen him in a while, and they just, again, loved to be around him. So the game goes on. At the end of the game, I was one of the last in the building, and he was one of the last to come out of the gym. And he comes walking up to me, and him and I talk for a little bit, and I put my hand out to shake his hand. I said, "Steve, it was so great to see you." And he just shook my hand with this like confident glow and just said, "Remember that." And then he left. And within the month, he passed away. Wow. And so that was 2005. And those 2 words, "remember that," forever changed my mind, like my heart. Like, I'm sitting there, and now like a year had passed, and I'm still remembering this interaction with Steve and those 2 words. And then all of a sudden I just start writing. I'm like, remember that. Okay. And I start writing. Essentially, I look at this and go, wait a minute. And I love music. I didn't know anything about it. I don't sing. I don't play an instrument, but I loved music and just kind of, I would pick it apart. Even back then, I was doing groups with counseling, breaking down lyrics, letting kids understand what they're truly listening to, not just the cool beat, but do you even know what this means? And, so I was doing that without this idea of that I like to write music. Well, then all of a sudden I see this on paper. I'm like, wait a minute. This is a song. This is a song in the making. So the verses were my interactions with Steve, and the chorus were my remember that's. And so I had that written out. Well, I don't know how to do proper channels in life. I've never been that way. Like step 1, step 2, step 3. I would be like step 1 I'd start out with, but then I would just go to 10. And not on purpose, not like I felt like I was entitled to, but that's just how I thought it was. You just knock on doors. At that point, I've been doing a bunch of these wiffle ball tournaments and golf outings, and I would reach for sponsorships. Well, I would just go national to get sponsorships, and I would hear 99 no's, but I would get 1 yes. And that would be enough. And so that's how I figured life was. I would just get no's a bunch of time, but keep confident, and then get 1 yes. And that 1 yes would probably make up for the previous 99 no's. If I would have gotten all those locals, it would have been cool. A little bit. But instead I get this one big one, and it kind of covers that. So as long as you're okay with the 99 no's, it's an all right way to go. So I wind up reaching out to, I'm like, who should I talk to about songwriting? Well, I at one point hated country music until I was about a sophomore in high school.
I can relate to that.
I did not like it. To me, and that wasn't because I really listened to it ever, but my group of friends never did. And to me, it was that joke of if you play your country music backwards, you get everything back. Your wife, your truck, your dog, and whatever else. It's like I lived that out until one day I was on a road trip up to the UP, Upper Peninsula, Michigan, for those that aren't as Midwest as us, for skiing, because in Wisconsin, southeastern Wisconsin, you have a couple little hills that are essentially bunny hills on most mountains, or you have a couple garbage dumps that they've turned into ski hills. So the UP actually had somewhat mountains. On the drive up there, my buddies that were from Lake Country, that's all they listened to is country. And Garth had just released the hits. And I'm like, oh, crap, I'm stuck in this car for 6 hours, and this is what I'm going to listen to. Well, all of a sudden, the dance comes on. And I'm like, wow. All right, I'm gonna give this a chance. Well, then we wound up listening to Alan Jackson's greatest hits and George Strait. I'm stuck in this car, and I'm loving life. I'm like, wow, this is not at all what I expected. So when I came up with this thought of a song, hey, who wrote The Dance? Let me look this person up. Why not? One of the biggest influential songs of all time. Let's look it up. Tony Aretta. And I'm like, I'm going to contact Tony to talk about songwriting.
Did you?
I emailed him.
I love that.
And within 12 hours, he got back to me. All right. And I was like, holy shit. And I'm back and forth with him a couple times. And his suggestions of maybe even meeting somebody at your church that could help put melody to what you're doing. And he's like, John, I got to tell you, at the time that I wrote The Dance, I barely could strum a guitar. I just had words that wound up getting into the hands of a small guy from Oklahoma. And the last thing he said to me was, if you ever get this song written, I want to hear it.
Yeah.
I'm like, thanks, Tony. It was just like,
when was this?
Well, let's see, 2005 or 6.
Okay.
And so there that was in my inbox. I still have it. I saved that. But then years pass and I'm just sitting with these words. I was contacting And I've learned since that what I was doing was probably putting me on some kind of list of don't let this guy contact us, because I was calling publishers. I was calling music record companies and introducing myself. And I'm like, they're like, yeah, we can't do that on account of copyright and legal issues. So you can't.
Some publishers have a wall where pictures, do not let this person.
I was on the back of a milk carton for that.
Okay.
Because
especially where the dance is dancing. Right here.
So, yeah, I didn't know any better. And that's what I did for quite a while. And in the meantime, I came up with other ideas. A Harley ballad. I've never ridden a Harley in my life, but I wrote a Harley ballad. Ballad. And a bourbon song that's not like the ones that we hear every few songs nowadays. It's unique, but I like bourbon, but I had to do some research on it, but like I have these ideas, but they're just poems. They're just ideas till COVID hit. So now we went from like 2005 to 19. We had just sold our house in a little town called Hartford, right north of where we're at. And we're building a new house a little bit further south in Richfield. And as most home builds will happen, there were some delays. Mm-hmm. So the perfect closing and moving into the new house didn't happen. So we wound up moving in with my in-laws with my two kids. And was it our dog? Yeah, our one dog at the time. And then COVID hit. And so a few of us got it. And then with the world not knowing what to do, our kids were then quarantined for a month and homeschooled for a month. And even though I was in education, I was not a good teacher. I was the cool uncle as the counselor. I could rile these kids up and then leave. Well, teachers have to stay there the whole dang time. Mm-hmm. My wife was a saint. And that's pushing it, because like she was losing her mind too, just because it's just different. So living in a small confined area for a few months, having COVID, the kids at home afterwards were like, we got to get out of here. We got to go. Let's go on vacation. Let's go to Nashville. So we start looking at Airbnbs, and you can imagine everything was getting weird. Nashville's pretty open. Mm-hmm. So we wind up looking at this little glamper, this fifth wheel on 13 acres with a private pond. And it was just stocked so my son could fish in it. And we were out in nature. We were near Leaper's Fork. Well, as I'm looking at this Airbnb, I'm reading the bio. Can I say names? I've said some names.
Sure.
All right, cool. So I'm reading this bio of Conrad Johnson. I'm like, huh, all right. In his bio, it talks about singer, songwriter, producer. I'm like, oh, that's cool. Well, he's got a really cool property. So I reached out to him to see about staying at his place. And he said, hey, I really appreciate you reaching out, but you want to bring your dog. And we're strict no pet. He's like, we have a German Shepherd, and I'm worried about that. And we want to keep the glamper hypoallergenic for future rentals. So I went and looked around, and there's 10,000 Airbnbs in Nashville. So I figured I could find something else, but either it wasn't the best situation like this one was, or it was just kind of another one of those moments of God pushing me. And so I look and I can't find anything like it. So much like the 99 no's you sometimes get, where you typically follow up and say, did you really say no? Yeah. I want to make sure I heard you correctly. And then they tell you no again. Then I stop bothering them so I don't wind up on more lists. But I call up Conrad. I'm like, Conrad, here's the deal. Email. I can't find anything else. Here's what I'm going to do. Here's my offer to you. I'm going to give you $200 more for a cleaning fee that you won't need. I have a 7-pound dog that's all hair. It's potty trained. You're going to just pocket that $200. You won't have to do anything with it. And I'll sign a waiver that says, if your dog eats my dog, I don't care. And he gets back to me. He's like, all right, I like you. You're persistent. Let's make this work. So we go down there. Instantly, my dog becomes his dog's best friend. Walking underneath the shadow of this gigantic German Shepherd. His kids are about my kid's age because he's on the property. He lived in this glamper when they were building their house, and he did a great job with his house. And then so they're nearby. Well, then we're sitting around the fire one night, and him and his wife are over, and he's like, John, you were asking me quite a few questions about music. Are you in the industry? I said, no. I said, I would love to be. I think I've got stories to tell. I just don't know how to put it together. And at this point, I had done a little research on him, because how many Conrads are there in Nashville? And put together that, wow, this guy sang the song Lead Me to the Cross. That was like up on the charts for Christian music back in the day, at Hillsong United. And he cut that. Him and Chris and Conrad were a duo at the time, and they took it up there, and he had a couple others. I'm like, all right, and he's working publishing with Michael W. Smith. I'm like, holy cow, this guy knows stuff. That's great. And so when he's like, all right, yeah, so you're interested in music. I said, yeah, I have words. He goes, well, I can help you with that. I'm like, in my head going, this is awesome. But we talked about this. You don't want to be that guy that just like, you have to just, the genuine relationship needs to be there. You don't want to just throw something out there. Even in real estate, you don't go there and just use car salesmen, bust on somebody's door and say, here's what I can list your house for, and blah, 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 blah. You got to build that relationship, because there's 10,000 of you here. There's 10,000 of me in Milwaukee. What's going to separate us? So that was like, my thought was like, okay, well, this is his livelihood, so I'm not expecting a freebie. And I just want to make sure that this is the right thing that we both should be working on. So I took that thought back home, and I'm like, all right, it's going to cost me something. I thought that's what the process would be. And truly, who am I? Like a songwriter can bust out a song in a day, and an idea. I've been sitting on lyric ideas for over a decade. I've never given myself the time to truly sit down and write regularly, because I didn't know that it was worth it. I thought it was maybe just foolish pride I was chasing. So that's what I was at home thinking, all right, is this something that I need to go forward on to get this dream out of my head and see if it could be a reality? Or is this just foolish pride and I should just set it aside? So I thought about it, talked to Becky about it, and I'm just like, you know what? This has been in my head for way the hell too long. I need to get it out. And so I called Conrad and said, hey, let's do something with this. So those 2 words, remember that, got sent to Conrad along with the rest of the idea. And his first reaction was, this is your first song, huh? I'm like, yeah. He goes, I got to admit to you, this is more than I thought I'd have to work with. I'm like, well, that's great. He's like, well, do you want me to write it as it is, because I can, and it'll be a great personal song? Or do you want, for him knowing, he's like, I know publishers, I know what people are looking for these days. Do you want me to work with that side of things? And I said a few things. I said, well, one, I trust you. At this point, we had built up this relationship where you have to have that foundation. I'm paying you. And I used to be a counselor where my words reach people. Eventually, they're teenagers, so most of the time they didn't buy the first day. They usually bought maybe a year or 2, or maybe never, but eventually, hopefully my words meant something to them. I said, Conrad, that's what I want my music to now be. I want my music to be able to reach people, whether it's therapeutic, going through something rough, something angry, or just something they want to feel good about and dance to. But I want my words to eventually reach the masses. And he's like, all right, let's do it. So then he works on this song, and we're talking every once in a while. He's sending me some stuff. And then my wife and I and kids were actually on a road trip up and down the coast of Maine when he sends me the acoustic version of what's not called Remember That. And in our talking and putting it together, I had talked about Golden Roads was a couple words that he was looking for a certain aspect of the song. Well, that's what the song wound up being called. It's called Golden Roads. And Becky and I played it in the car, and my kids are in the back seat, and they're like, Dad, what song is that? That's a really cool song. And I'm like, oh, it's my song. It's me and Conrad's song. And they're like, what? That's awesome. So we started listening to that song during the entire trip. And when I talked to him about originally writing it, he said that he would do an acoustic version and a full band version, like produce it all. Like that's what it all entailed. And so from that point on, we started working on the full band version. And he'd add stuff to it, and we added in some steel guitar just in the background. Even though it's a country or Christian song, it can go either way. It's kind of right there in the middle. And so he added a little bit of steel guitar to it to kind of give it that little bit of twang that I was hoping for. But then he added some more to it. And the more he added to it, I'm like, oh, Becky and I are listening to it and going, it seemed to be taking away from the message. And being that I was new, still am very new, I didn't want to like insult anybody but I'm like, Conrad, I got to tell you, the more we're adding to it, it seems like it's starting to take away. And he's like, John, I agree with you 100%. But as part of this kind of, agreement we had, I want to work on a full band version for you. And I said, I don't think you need to. I said, I appreciate what you've done. And I think you hit it right out of the park the first time out. And I said, hey, and if the goal is maybe someday somebody cuts this, they're going to be putting their own spin on it anyway. So do we need to really build it up when somebody's going to probably strip it down anyway? And let the lyrics show and shine. Because that's the thing. I love today's sound of country, but I want the stories to make a bigger comeback. And that's a little hard to do in a 3 to 3.5 minute song nowadays, where you used to have 4+. But that's what my goal is. And so again, so that was 2021, 22-ish, 21, I think, that song finally came together after 2005. And then I'm noticing, like I said, remember that was not in the verse or in the song at all. And those were the 2 words that got me going. But there was enough of that cut out where now I still have that to work on for something else. Because even though those words brought me into music, that was the door. And then once I walked in the room, I realized that, oh, all right, so you can branch off, and just because those words are gone doesn't mean that the meaning behind the song isn't there.
So you still have Remember That?
I still have that one in the holster.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
He said, remember that. That's how I'd set that up. I can't keep, but the songwriting mind is tricky.
Yep.
I mean, it's always combing.
Yeah.
You're combing conversations.
Oh, for sure.
And then when another guy comes in the room, it's like squirrel, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
That's a good indicator of songwriter.
Yeah.
It's one of the boxes you check. But I'm like, how would I set that up? And he said, remember that.
Yep.
That's a story song.
The line before it was, in his answer again proud. And I'll have to look back at it because it's been so long now, but it was, in his answer again proud, ... remember that.
I'm not saying I'm right.
Yeah, no. I mean, and
I'm saying that's what I do.
Correct. And because all the other remember that was like, remember that night of our first date, I met your dad, his dog and gun. With Bible in hand and grinning teeth, he said, go on and have some fun. Remember that trip to Vegas, wearing suits and playing games.
I see.
The ladies thought we were doctors, and of course, those were our names. So it was all these remember that stories, and then at the end, it was just the cut off, remember that, done.
Mm-hmm. Nice. Gotcha.
So that's still there, but once it was a chorus that never repeated. Every remember that was something different. And I learned that that's not necessarily the best way to go about it. Those are essentially more verses. So now I'm trying to work it where those become verses.
So you might be a verse guy. Like some people, it's like, oh, you're a verse guy. You're a chorus guy. You're this.
Yeah.
I've been in the room and seen like there are guys who won't even add a word to the song, but they're just good hype people, and then they end up as a co-writer.
Right. They sit there in the groove.
Sometimes
What you said.
Sometimes you come in.
I've written with those guys.
Yeah.
And you're like, on your name's going on it.
Sometimes you're the one bringing the coffee. Sometimes you got to know.
Yeah.
When to, if someone gets on it, you know what I mean. Let them stay on it. if they're on it.
Yep.
Yeah, you don't want to mess up the mojo once you start.
Yeah, let the flow.
That's Nashville word for a third is what they say. So it's
a good hang thing. I mean,
yep.
Christian's talked a bunch on the podcast about being a good hang.
Yeah,
I think that's a big critical thing for co-writing, is to be a good hang in that room, in that moment.
Yeah.
Instead of, you'll feel it lock up when everyone's fighting for their idea.
And that's where, when we first started, that's where I want to be here more.
Yeah. It's like a deal, like a real estate deal too. You know what I mean? When everybody hits that wall.
Yes.
I'm right.
Yep.
I'm right. You're wrong. You're wrong. Nothing's happening.
But when you get the win-win.
Yeah, you're shooting for the win-win.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And the best idea should be the winner, even if it ain't yours.
That's the pride part. You got to put that aside.
You got to be humble.
Yeah.
Got to check your ego at the door.
Right.
Stuff. And the same thing for playing. Sometimes you might want to make a decision that is more self-serving than it is serving the larger picture, which is the song at the end of the day. And the best players in the world can check their ego. The best songwriters in the world do the same when they walk into that room. And the best idea wins. So it's fun. So. It's be fun to see as you make trips down here to see how everything goes for you, and I'm excited to keep tabs on everything and hear what you're doing. So
and even after that Golden Roses were initially done, it's now been a few years, and I've now gotten into NSAI, and I've now been pitching it, where before I didn't know what to do with it. I'm like, hey, I got this song. Cool. Well, now I've had the chance to pitch it. Right now it's on the top 40 of NSAI, and had an opportunity. And so when I saw that email saying it was being considered for that, I was just like, this is great.
Yeah.
And I know there's so much more like this. And that's where I just need to learn how to get that out.
Yeah.
Connect with the right people. Have that right group. And that group's going to change. Like depending on what kind of song you're working on and who you want,
And then you could take that back to Wisconsin and have a community, have a little community. You're the guy from Nashville, bringing back this wisdom.
Right.
Because there's always musicians,
Right.
And this is like where the sacred knowledge of songwriting comes from and stuff like that. So
and that's
I didn't have a guy like that. You could be that guy.
Well, and that's where currently, and you can correct me for sure on this, but like being at that I'm in right outside Milwaukee with these songwriter groups and whatnot, you can connect with people all over the world and work on something. But in my mind, I'm like, while there might be somebody awesome in Washington, I want to connect with those people that are boots on the ground here. Instead of having two people in far reaches trying to get to the hub, at least have that connection on the ground here where, yes, I could come down here. Southwest Point's got a lot of them.
Yep.
Get down here when I can, when I, when it's right, but then have that other person that's already here.
Yeah. And there's great writers all over the place. I know Lori McKenna's, I think she's up in Massachusetts. I know she's not down here. And she's been one of the biggest writers. People go up to write with her, and she's put in the work though, and she's so good. Yeah,
maybe it'll be 20 years from now.
It's but there are people everywhere to write with, and people who are wanting to do the same thing. But Nashville is kind of that central hub of, it's just where you're going to find an influx of people doing what you want to be doing, and you're going to connect with the best, because all the big fish from small ponds come here, and then all of a sudden they're small fish in a really, really big pond. And it's going to make you better by being here and writing songs. So, and because you'll get in the room with people who are better than you, and that's where you want to be. I was always told on the musician side, if you're the best person in the band, it's time to move on.
That's a really good way of looking at it.
And I've heard that about companies, and if you're in the top 5 at your company, it's time to go. It's time to go. Find somewhere else, because you want to be on the bottom end of that list. You want to be on the bottom end of that band, because by being in that situation, it's going to make you better. You got to be good enough to get there in the first place.
Right.
But being on the bottom rung, it's just, you're going to up your performance.
Yep.
So.
You got to play to your competition. Like what I like to golf, and sometimes when I play the crappiest golf courses, little cow pasture, I play horrible. But if I go and I get to play a course like Whistling Straits or some of these really nice courses around, I played well. I played good because I'm focused in more. I'm looking at this environment going, this is my office. I should treat this well. And same thing within real estate. I've always wanted to be in the room with those doing it better and stronger. And I accomplished that a lot with my previous broker, where I would just reach out to the top performers in the state and have lunch with them and just pick their brains. And they were kind enough to do that. And that's the thing. I think a lot of times people are afraid to have that ask. Like, oh, I can't reach out to that person because who am I? Well, again, what's the worst they could tell you is no, I don't have time. But a lot of them do, because so many other people pass on that opportunity. So now I just recently switched over. There's a brokerage in Wisconsin, First Weber. And I have a good friend of mine who's been crushing it with First Weber for a while. And he's been trying to get me to come over to join his team. And for a while, I was trying to get him to come over to my brokerage because that'd be easy, because I was with KW and I loved KW, still do. The family that runs it, just everything about it. But eventually, and he made sense for me to go. And his name's Tony. And then I'm with Wendorf and Associates with First Weber. And the team, there's 8 of us now, and 7 of them are crushing it. And I love it. I mean, there's a part of me that's just like, okay, I gotta get Maverick to re-engage here right now. I'm just hovering but Tony knew that about me too. He knew that for years I've been very successful in this industry. He knows my past. He knows the person I am. So he's like, I'm not buying what you're doing now. I'm buying you for the future, because I know it's going to come back around. And so now I'm with this group of people that are doing it every day. Hey, I got a new listing. Hey, I got a new buyer. Hey, I got a new listing. Got a lake property, blah, blah. And I'm just like, okay, I'm going to have a listing coming up in August. Here's another one. But they're motivating me like I haven't been in a while, because now I've never been on a team. I've always been individual. But now I've got this accountability of people that my actions do reflect the success of the team, where before my actions were just my actions. And so I think it's a great place to be. I'm excited for where the future is. Once I get back from here, hoping to communicate with a lot of the people I met here and keep those relationships growing. But I'm ready to just get off the couch and get back into the game.
Awesome.
And take me and this team good places.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a perfect place to end this.
Yeah, remember
Awesome.
that.
Yeah,
remember that. All right.
Yeah.
I love it.
Thank you for your time and
Yeah.
coming down here to see us. This has been great.
Thank you.
Appreciate you, buddy.
Yeah. Thanks a lot.